I got some great advice from a friend the other day. She said to me, Jason, if you want to know what I'm thinking, if you want to know what I'm feeling, just ask me. Don't guess. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. So I want to ask you, friends, what do you like about the show? What do you want to see more of? Who do you want to hear from? So I'd like you to take part in a survey. Please visit survey.mreanotes.com. Survey.mreanotes.com. And here's the cool thing. When you fill out the survey, you're automatically going to get all of the past one-pagers that we've done. And in addition to that, you're also going to get entered to win MREA books and other books written by the authors of the MREA, autographed Jason Abrams playbooks, and then a whole bunch of things that are so secret I can't even tell you. So you don't want to miss out. Survey.mreanotes.com. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent podcast. I'm Jason Abrams, and this is the place where we lift the curtain on the world of real estate like never before. Every week, I sit down with visionaries, pirates, and mavericks. We're here to document, demonstrate, and most importantly, demystify their game-changing models and systems. What secrets propel them to the top? And how are they living their dreams? This is about passion, it's about strategy, but above all, it's about real, tangible success. So buckle up and let's dive in. This is the Millionaire Real Estate Agent podcast. This is a special one, friends. Today, and it's a first, I'm joined with two guests live in studio. I'm joined by Keller and Jay Papasan. They, of course, wrote the book along with Dave Jenks, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, which is the namesake for our show. Why, pray tell, are we coming to you with the two greatest guests all at once, smack dab in the middle of the year? Because it's smack dab in the middle of the year. You see, this is the time of the year that real estate agents need to look up and do a mid-year check. This is why we have Mega Camp, which is this giant event that you're going to hear us talking about in the middle of the year. Because we know that we have to make hay when the sun shines. And friends, the sun is shining. You know, at the end of the day, it always comes down to the same three things. How do I motivate myself to have massive success? How do I educate myself to have massive success? And then how do I manage myself to make sure the success happens? We are going to unpack these things one at a time. This, friends, is the first of a two-part show series. Sit back and buckle up. This is Keller and Jay Papasan. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, sir. We're delighted to be here.
Sure. Are you surprised it took him so long to invite us onto it?
I am surprised a little bit.
There was a little pressure in that. When you start a podcast and it's based around this book and the way that y'all thought about the world,
Yeah.
I want you to know you wake up and you feel that pressure to honor it.
Well, you do a great job. I really enjoy listening to it, by the way. So does my wife.
Thank you. What do you like about it?
You're cute. I think you nail it. I think that you show up with the exact amount of energy and curiosity that allows you to get the best out of the conversations you're having, and at the same time bringing your own insights into that and the time frame. So it's the perfect length of time, and within that period, I never leave that without a really strong couple of takeaways.
I love that.
I would add to that, in the spirit of the book, is that I think that you make a sincere effort with every interview to find the model, right? It's not just what so-and-so did. You're trying to find a bigger pattern that listeners, like I find it practical.
Yeah.
If I'm going to listen to a podcast out walking the dog or whatever, like I want to take something away that I can go put to use. So I think you do a really good job of consistently delivering the models.
That feels like the genius and the experiment that y'all went on, which was if you were going to study highly successful people, you were going to find models.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And you will.
Do you remember when we were talking about writing this book, you laid out some titles and said, these are the books that you and Dave were looking at and pulling models from. And it seemed like one of them was The Millionaire Next Door. And you said that one of the things you liked about it, it wasn't just this guy's ideas. He'd interviewed all of these people and looked for what they had in common.
Sure.
And that was a really novel way to research a book. And I just remember thinking, well, that's cool. I didn't know that that was something that you could do.
Yeah. Well, yes, that's right. What we were tired of was reading books about people's opinions.
Yeah. How I did it.
Well, you have to be the person who wrote it in order to follow that model. Because it was a singular model built by a singular person around what they personally like to do and were good at. And it's not that that doesn't have value, but when you add that with another couple of hundred interviews to balance that out, you end up kind of smoothing the edges such that you get more of a practical understanding about what's possible. And that's really important.
That's what you refer to as the difference between unique practice and best practice.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. It's like a unique practice is the individual performing at a high level, maybe with special talents that are hard to emulate. But when you see the pattern, you get to best practice that most people can do.
Well, and you need both. So
Yeah.
ideally, what I would prefer in life is to hear the models of best practices. And then once I understand that, I want to hear all the unique practices to understand how I might be able to tweak that personally if that applies to me. They both have a place, but the practical model built from the masses is what matters first.
Always. When we were building out the podcast, I met with different producers, and they all said, so what's the goal of the show? What are you actually trying to accomplish? Who is your target audience? And I ended up back at the cover of the MREA, where it says it's not about the money, it's about maximizing your potential.
Yes.
And I wanted to build a podcast for people that wanted to maximize the success in their life.
Yeah.
And as we've been doing it, there are these themes that are showing up. It's almost like the path lives in these three buckets. The people that we're interviewing, they're wildly motivated. They're massively educated around their key thing. And then they manage themselves in such a way that provides the results.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it feels like these are the three buckets that successful people have in common.
Fundamentally, they are.
Yeah. I think that you can bracket that with add on the very end accountability, that they seek out accountability. It's like a bookend, like mindset on the front end, accountability on the other. And you've got all the key ingredients of huge success.
Yeah, because they not only have a goal, they're accountable to it.
Yes.
And there's a huge difference between the two of those.
Well, so let's break it down and go bucket by bucket. I want to start with this idea of motivating. How do the most successful people wake up and be motivated?
Well, we said it in the book, and that is by thinking big. Yeah. And whether that's as big as they can think or as big as thinking is, either one will work. But at the end of the day, the people that lead the biggest lives are the people that are driven by the biggest goals. That's it. There's no other way around it.
I remember when Dave Jinks, our co-author who passed away, came back from interviewing Valerie Fitzgerald, and she had connected her business success to a larger why, her big why, which was to be a mom for her girls. And so she gotten divorced, and she was a parent of two daughters, and she could not pursue her former career. So she was highly motivated. So she tapped into, like, I want to provide for these people and use that as a way to pursue excellence in a professional career. And I see that pattern all the time, that it's not about the money. It's not about the plaques. It's not about the awards, that they've tapped into something that's much bigger than production and profit that they're using to drive those same things.
I think that's really interesting because there seems to be this discussion happening in the industry right now, which is, I have all the accolades, I've gotten the awards, or now I have a bucket of money, more than I thought I was going to have, and I'm not any happier.
Yeah. Well, money doesn't buy happiness. So if you think that achievement itself, the winning of the trophy or the getting of the money is going to make you happier, you're playing a fool's game. That's not going to make you happier. As we wrote in the one thing, happiness happens on the way to fulfillment. In order to have fulfillment, you have to ask what's going to fulfill me. And it won't be money. It won't ever be money. Money can buy you convenience. It can buy you leverage. It can buy you some opportunity, but it's not going to buy you happiness. So if your goal is to be happy, money isn't the topic, which is why we wrote, it's not about the money, dadgummit. That's why we put it underneath. So we're going to give you some big models about succeeding, but we want you to be real clear. If you don't know who you are or why you want to get up in the morning, money won't solve anything for you, which is why at the very beginning of the book, we talk about your big why.
Yeah.
Why did we do that? In a book about achieving financial success, we start out talking about the antithesis of that. Why?
That's interesting. I never thought of it that way. I do know, though, that it feels like it's easy to get lost in the allure of money, and it becomes this aphrodisiac where you think when you have more of it, suddenly it's going to feel more fulfilling.
I think you have to define success. So like, I remember when we were writing The One Thing Later, we were like, oh, we have to come up with a definition for success. And we looked for all the different ways that people measure it, but ultimately success is getting what you want. And what's really surprising is a lot of grown-up people out there don't actually and haven't seriously thought about what they actually truly want. So they've defined success by some exterior measure, having the next car, having the bigger house, comparative measures of success, or by the expectations of someone else. Maybe it was a parent, maybe as a spouse. And all the research points to that. You get to places and you look up and it feels hollow very quickly. The irony was, like, Gary was the first person who suggested, and then the research backed it up, he set a goal to be the best he could be, to explore his potential. And the first thing I thought of is like, but there's no finish line. How do you ever achieve success if there's no finish line? But then if happiness happens on the way, what you've done is you've actually tricked yourself into prolonging your happiness, because you never cross the finish line. You never get the, well, now what? What's next question? You've pushed that into the future and you just get to enjoy the milestones along the way.
Yeah. So the secret there is buying into the journey, not the destination.
Yeah.
And too many people buy into the destination as the reward. The journey is all you have. Your life is your journey. Your destination will be the same as everybody else. The only question is what will be on your tombstone.
Yeah.
Wow.
Other than that, we all end up at the same place. So why would the destination be your goal? The journey is your goal. So you need to enjoy that.
So on one side, if you have motivate, on the other side, you have burnout. You hear people all the time saying, I feel burnt out. I guess that's impossible if you've made the journey the goal.
Well, I think you're right. I think in the hustle culture that we live in today, burnout has become a very, very common phrase. But I think, again, it's because people bought into the idea, and I don't mean this derogatorily, but I think they have lazily bought into the idea that if I just make $1 million, it'll solve all my problems. I don't need to work on anything about me or my life or anything about it. I'm just going to go make $1 million and I will be happy because it will solve all my problems. And then they get to $1 million and they discover it didn't make them happy and they're freaking burnt out by all the sacrifices they made along the way to get to something that didn't matter as much as they thought it would. And you're looking, oh my gosh, stop for a second. Back up. Do the work. Why are you alive? What do you want your life to be about? What is important to you that you should never sacrifice? Can you make that list? Good. Well, write that down and don't sacrifice it for anything. I turn 67 in a few weeks. And I ask people, do I look burnout? Do I act burnout? Well, I've been doing this longer than almost all of you, continuously, nonstop. I'm not burnout.
Two things. You were hitting on the first one. I do think that having a big why, right? Having something that's bigger than the objective goal, like this, like money or whatever, it pulls people forwards, right? It's not a push, it's a pull. And you look at people who have callings and missions, they often are pulled through really hard times to do things. The other one is that you got the gift of having some physical ailments. And so I'm using your story. Yeah. You've taught it far and wide. You discovered early that time is a cheat and you would not use time as the cheat.
That's right.
And so I think a lot of the hustle culture is around, well, I can get ahead just by throwing more hours at the target. If I just work longer hours and put more in my hours, I'll always get ahead. But the longer hours, like, then when are you resting? When are you restoring? When are you working on yourself and feeding yourself with relationships? Like, you can become obsessed with throwing hours at this one thing that doesn't feed you back. And that's a source of burnout too.
It's interesting because some would call that a hack. And Gary, you called it a cheat. What's the difference?
Well, the hack is bringing discipline to something before it's a habit. How do you hack something in order to do it when you don't naturally do it until it becomes a habit? A cheat is actually doing the wrong thing.
Elon Musk pops into my brain right away, right? Because you see him on the socials and he says, I have a mattress in my office and I sleep there and no one can catch up on the number of hours that I work. That would be hollow for you.
It would be hollow, and it would not be a role model that I would take seriously. I don't want that life.
I wonder too if he's not competing to be some sort of public business gladiator that no one else can beat in that arena of I will work harder than anyone else. So maybe that does something for him that I don't personally value, and I wouldn't wish it on someone that I love because I think it does lead to a life of regrets. The guy is very successful, and so maybe it works for him. That's what we can't judge.
Well, you're saying he's successful at what? Because that's the trick. Successful at what? If we define success by the accumulation of money,
building big companies.
And it could be the accumulation of wives. I mean, what's your definition of success? And I don't mean that in any mean-spirited way. What I said was a fact. But come on, what's your definition? And by the way, I would never want to get in an argument with someone like that because it's their life and they get to choose. So this isn't about judging whether what they're doing is right for them. The only thing you have to ask is what's right for me.
Do you think if you would have worked more hours, you could have built Keller Williams faster?
A lot faster. Of course I could, but that was never the goal. The speed wasn't the issue. Why would it be that? What I understood was if I woke up every day and I did the right things, I'm going to ultimately get the best I can get, and I can't get any more out of myself than that. And that's what my life will be. But along the way, it's like, how do you ever get back missing a 3-year-old's birthday party? Just tell me that. You can't, by the way. And if you missed it, you'll never know what you missed. But take it from the guy that never missed any of those, you missed what mattered most in life to someone like me. There would be a list of things that I'm unwilling to sacrifice. So for me, business success or financial success was, and I use the word game loosely, but it was a game to be played within the margins of boundaries, meaning that in order for me to have a full life, to be fulfilled in the things that mattered, I couldn't work all the time because I would miss
all the stuff.
So to me, time was a cheat because if I put boundaries, then I have to get better at what I do.
Right.
If I work longer, I don't have to get better. I just win. So to me, it's like not putting boundaries is kind of lazy because it doesn't require me to get better. I'm just going to beat you because I sleep less.
This is so important. And this is a relatively simple truth. And I know it feels completely backwards. The idea that the more time I spend on something, the greater result I'm going to have. This makes sense as soon as you really start to think about it. But putting in constraints and boundaries forces you to get more out of the time that you're spending doing the activity. I'm harking back to an incredible book called The One Thing, aptly written, by the way, by Keller and Jay. And on page 157, here's what they say. They said, in the end, putting together a life of extraordinary results simply comes down to getting the most out of what you do when what you do matters. Listen to that again. Putting together a life of extraordinary results simply comes down to getting the most out of what you do when what you do matters. And in this way, we can completely understand that step one is I put my goal in place. Step two is I build the constraints around the goal so that I actually enjoy my life while I'm on the journey to achieving it. And then step three, when I'm going to be at work, I'm there. When I'm going to be at play, I'm there. Friends, if what they say in The One Thing is true, and I believe it is, then ultimately the key becomes getting the most out of what you do when what you do matters. That's the secret. Friends, if you like the MREA podcast, you will absolutely love Mega Agent Camp. This is when we get together live in person in Austin, Texas, and we walk over 100 mega agents across the stage, interviewing them in real time on what's the thing they do better than everybody else. You also get a one-page explanation for each of the speakers. You don't want to miss it. It's August 12th through 15th. I'm going to be there. Gary Keller is going to be there. Jay Papasan is going to be there. And you should be there. I want you to visit tickets.mreanotes.com. That's tickets.mreanotes.com. Use promo code MREA50 and get $50 off your tickets. You don't want to miss this. I'll see you there.
I use the word constraints. You place constraints around what you were willing to do to be successful in your career. And your wife would tell us, because I've heard her say it, that either you're in the picture or you were the one taking it at all those life moments. So you've got that thing that you have no regrets over. The great thing about constraints is saying, I want to be successful, but I also want to be a good spouse and a good parent and maybe a good spiritual leader. Like, you've got your list of things that are more important than that, is it forces you to ask a bigger question. It's a bigger question. Well, how could I still achieve that level of success, but with those constraints? And you could go through a million examples of where constraints actually gifted people with breakthroughs. When you just say, I could add more hours, that's really simple kind of linear thinking. It forces you to think and look for exponential answers. What's a bigger answer that no one's asked? That's the whole 10x is easier than 1x, right? Than 2x. I'm butchering the title, but it forces you to ask a much bigger question. That's actually where a lot of breakthroughs happen.
I would make an argument that at the end of the day, we should all have the same goal, right? To live our best life.
Yes.
And if I'm in the real estate industry, then my goal should be to help as many families as I possibly can. We should all have that goal. Right. There shouldn't be, I only need to help 10 families this year or 20 families this year. My goal would be to help as many families as I can within the time constraints that I've given myself. Now let's go.
It's easy to say, here are the 3 ways to stay motivated. That's easy. The real answer, though, is to build out the life that you want, set the parameters in the business that you're willing to live in, and you shouldn't have to wake up and worry about feeling motivated.
That's exactly right.
When you're getting better at what you do too, you enjoy your work. Like, in the beginning, it's hard. You're learning, you're failing, but like, the better you get, the more you inherently enjoy things. It's crazy. So like, maybe you actually enjoy going to work and you enjoy the challenges.
Yeah, so here's the secret to the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book.
Okay.
And that is, what we really wanted was everybody to be doing the same thing fundamentally at their pace and in whatever talents or gifts or learning or skills or whatever that they can bring to it. But we wanted everyone to maximize their potential.
Yes.
And we didn't want them to choose lifestyle goals. What we wanted them to do is to put constraints around their lifestyle goals, but not their effort. What I want is full effort in the time that you have to give. And what happens is people set lifestyle goals that possibly are much lower than their potential, and then they put no time constraints on it. What do you think's going to happen when you do those two things? You're going to have a life of a lot of regret. And most likely, you're also, within 5 to 7 years or 10 years, you're going to burn out. You'll be one of those individuals going, man, I'm just so burnt out.
What would you tell that person that's listening to this and is feeling that right now? And they might be going, well, is it too late for me?
No, not at all. Just go set constraints. Just go look at your life and say, well, what other things would you like to do? Would you like to learn to play the guitar? Would you like to learn to sing? Would you like to learn to play tennis or go bowling or learn to surf or whatever? What are the other things that you want to do? Or are there philanthropic goals that you have that you'd like to go pursue? Okay, great. So what time constraints do you need to put on your work so that you'll have the energy and the time outside of that to do these other things?
Well, I think that's spot on. And I think it's one of the reasons that you've had the longevity that you've had, because Keller Williams didn't come out and start making money on day one.
No.
How many years did it take?
7 years I lost money.
So for 7 years, you lost money.
My fundamental core business has never lost money.
You were incubating it out of another business.
And I was incubating out of another business. But Keller Williams, as you know it today, lost money for 7 years.
But I just want everybody to close your eyes. If you're driving, don't do it. But just close your eyes and think for a second, because I talk to real estate agents all the time that are 2 years in or 3 years into running a model or running a team or even running their own practice. And they say, man, I'm burnt out. It's not working. It's not happening fast enough. I can't go buy the house that I want. This isn't working out the way that I thought it was. And then they tend to maybe switch gears. And you might try 3 or 4 different styles of business in 7 years. And I think one of the reasons you didn't is because you enjoyed your life during that time with these kind of boundaries that you're talking about. You weren't saying, once this thing makes money, I'm going to start living. That wasn't what you said.
No, that seems like a deal with the devil.
Yeah.
I think people are making that deal all the time.
I hate hearing that. That makes me very sad. At the end of the day, happiness is a choice. It's a gift you give yourself. It's not contingent on anything. You can be unhappy with your circumstances and at the same time be a happy person.
It's weird and contradictory sounding, but you can be happy with your life and be incredibly dissatisfied with your current circumstances at the same time.
Oh my gosh.
You can be working to improve those circumstances and still be happy. And I think people learning that trick, and I've been there at times where I just feel like that part of my life that's not operating at its potential and I just kind of like have to look at it with my peripheral vision, lest I look at it full on and go, oh no, woe is me. But I have to have some focus on it or it doesn't get better. But then you can still say, but I won't allow that part of my life to rule all of my life.
Well, if you don't choose happiness and you let circumstance define your fundamental happiness, you will be on a roller coaster of happy, unhappy, happy, unhappy.
Yeah.
Because circumstances, no matter how hard you try, will be filled with both good times and bad times.
Yeah.
At some point, you'll be confronting death in your family. You may even be confronting your own death. At some point, you will be. I mean, tragedy will be all around you. And if you believe that life is only happy in the good times, but you can't be happy in the bad times, you have signed up for a lifetime of roller coaster emotions.
Yep. I love the wisdom, and I love that I was a recipient of it for the last almost 24 years to hear someone that's successful also saying, and you can have a good life too. It doesn't require all the sacrifice. So I just I think it's great. It needs to be said more often, but I don't know of a lot of people that walk around talking about this in highly successful business circles when you have this cult of hustle. They'd much rather talk about what they had to give up to get where they are. I don't know why that is.
We can't speak for anyone but ourselves.
Right.
So I say this without judgment. I say it talking to myself and sharing the way I believe about living my life.
I'm not talking to you. This is just my self-talk. I've heard you say that.
Because I don't want to come off as judgmental.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you don't know what you don't know till you know it. Meaning that a lot of people would say, but why is it a bad thing for me to work 15 hours? I'm so happy doing it. And you look up and you go, well, because there's more than life. There was cheesecake and there was ice cream, by the way. I can promise you they're both awesome. And the person says, yeah, but I'm so happy. And I go, look, I can't speak for you, but I'm going to make a bet that someday I'm going to meet you and you're going to be very unhappy with that choice. You will regret that choice. You will, because the research says we will be unhappy with that choice at some moment. Yeah. We just will be, because it's a deal made with the devil. It's not a good deal.
Yeah, there is research on it. You're not guessing.
No. Oh, gosh, no. We wrote about it in the One Thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's real clear, the research. All you have to do is go ask people that are dying, what's their regret?
Well, there was Bronnie Ware's book. That was great. And then I believe it's Martin Seligman, if I'm saying his name right.
Yes,
that was kind of
right.
the pioneer of the positive psychology. And they just really looked hard in the elements of what truly makes people happy and what doesn't. And it's great. Instead of psychology just be about fix me, let me talk about my mom or whatever. It was really about, let's look at the causes of happiness and how we can be more proactive at getting it.
The equation to feel motivated is different than being motivated to live your best life.
And my mom, and maybe your parents said this too, but my mom always said, look, I don't care what you do, but whatever you do, do your best. I don't care if you're a ditch digger. That was the favorite line.
I tried to find the origin. My dad would actually say, you're going to be the best dang ditch digger if you're going to choose that.
I had a teacher who said, Jason, you're going to be fine because the world needs ditch diggers also. And so we've all had very different experiences
with the ditch digger. I don't know where that came from. But anyway, the point is that it was beat into my head or somehow it got into my soul. Just go do your best no matter what, right? I can't imagine, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to work 16-hour days and I'm going to be my best in real estate, but I'm also going to be the best spouse ever. Okay, explain that to me. The best parent of 2 kids while working 16-hour days and being a spouse. Explain that to me. And I'm going to maintain my relationships with my childhood friends. Explain that to me.
The math doesn't play out.
The math doesn't play out, Jay. Yeah. That's exactly right. It doesn't. And anyone who tells you that it is playing out is lying to you and themselves.
Because they don't want to have to tell the truth to themselves.
Yeah,
I think everybody's rationale when they're doing it is there's always tomorrow. But that's the deal with the devil. You don't know that you get tomorrow or that those people will want to talk to you when tomorrow's there because you ignored them last week.
Well, the secret to success is the same secret to maximizing your potential. And it's a word called leverage. Mm-hmm. And the second that you realize that you'll never be able to do it all yourself, that's when you realize that constraints are not a constraint on the outcome.
Right.
Constraints are not a constraint on the outcome.
Yeah, the constraint on my time is not a constraint on the outcome.
It's a constraint on the methods to get there.
That's it. And once you realize that the only ways you maximize your potential is in relationship with others through the concept of leverage, you realize that by putting time constraints and mastering leverage, you can accomplish all the things that you ever hoped your life would be about within the time frame that you're willing to devote to it.
Mm-hmm. And you don't have to do it alone.
No.
If you're operating without constraints, you're probably not maximizing your time.
Or your potential.
Right.
It does sound irrational because on surface, you're like, okay, I'm just going to outwork it. But it makes perfect sense to me. When you're forced to figure out how to get the maximized potential in the shorter period of time, you'll have to figure it out.
You can't beat me by outworking me because I can out leverage you. In basketball, I can move the ball faster by passing it versus dribbling it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, dribbling is doing it alone. Passing is leverage. I can beat you with leverage every time. So go ahead, work 24 hours. That's awesome, do it. I'll still win if we're measuring financial success.
Yeah.
I'll still beat that. So your potential is never maximized by your effort alone. It's maximized in doing you all that you can do within your constraints and then getting in a relationship with other people. And once you learn that, you almost can, I hate to say it, have it all, but you can actually have a big professional life, a big personal life, a big financial life. You can have all of those things.
That's what we talk about in Think Like a CEO, this idea that the leader casts a vision. And that vision is what attracts others to the cause, whether they be partners, just volunteers, employees, whatever. But that's how you get multiples. You have 24 people working 1 hour versus one person working 24.
Yes, that's it. Well said.
Makes sense to me. So how do you think about education? Because in order to have this equation for success, we needed to motivate ourselves, we have to educate, and then we have to manage. How do you think about educate?
Well, I heard early in my life that education is never out. Doesn't matter what your age is, it's never out. So this idea of if I knew everything that I needed to know, why am I not achieving or getting the most out of what I'm doing? It fundamentally means you're missing something. What is it? And what happens is a lot of people just kind of quit learning way short of when they should, right? They spend their proverbial high school or college or professional designation life learning. And then it's like, I'm done now. I'm done with that. And they don't learn again. And I can assure you that that's not true.
No. Well, it's certainly not true with this audience, but I do hear that, which is, I'll talk to an agent who's doing incredible production and I'll say, well, what events are you going to? Well, who's coaching you right now? And a lot of time they'll say, you know what? I'm not going to any of that stuff and I don't have a coach.
I don't have time to get educated. I'm too busy doing.
Let's build off the last argument. If you know time's not it, right? But you have to get better to get multiples of results from your time, then you have to learn. You have to improve your skills. You have to learn and practice. And I think it's magnified in our industry, real estate, because it typically has been highly competitive, right? Equal opportunity, unequal reward system. So there's an edge in knowing how to do it better, faster, more efficiently than your competition. There's an edge in that. And the top people lean into it. So instead of, hey, I went to college already, they go to college every morning. Right? They make learning a part of their routine so that they can constantly be reaching their potential.
Yeah. And every day that you wake up trying to hit something as hard as you can, there are hundreds, if not thousands of people trying to do exactly the same thing. And they're all learning something that at the very least would either tell you, don't ever do that, or that would be the thing to do. I did a couple of interviews today prior to this, and I can't tell you how many things I learned.
You mean you were being interviewed?
No, I was interviewing them, and at the same time, I'm taking notes. They're giving me answers, and I'm going, I never heard it said like that.
After 40 years in the real estate business.
Well, I've been in it longer than 40 years. That's just...
I only use the time frame as a way to make the point.
Yeah.
You learned new things today about real estate.
I learned new things. I learned from the two of you so much, it's crazy. One of the things I love about both of you is you're learning based and you don't mind sharing.
Yeah.
And so working with you is like getting almost like a PhD in life sometimes. And I'm really grateful for it. You said it earlier, and that is if you're going to put constraints on your time, the only way you're going to maximize your potential is getting better at what you do.
Right.
And getting better at what you do, you got two options. You can learn by your own experience, or you can learn vicariously through the experience of others.
There you go.
And those are your only choices. So if you're going to learn only by your experience, that's a slow boat to jalapa, as they say. But if you want to have your experiences and at the same time live vicariously through the experiences of others, you're going to go as fast as you could ever possibly go, because you're going to be taking leapfrog after leapfrog over your experience, because people have actually also tried that or tried this, and here's what they've learned. You might think about that. We had this event called Mega Camp.
Was that the genesis of Mega Camp?
100%. It was get a bunch of top people in a room and for 2 days just talk. That was the original genesis of it, right? And we just talked. We each got up and just spoke and talked.
How many people?
39, 37. It was less than 40 people, I know that. It was a very tiny room.
In 44 days, we're going to do it again, and there'll be, 8,000 people in the room.
Yeah.
And 150 people will probably go across that stage, either in a panel or speakers.
Curated individuals.
What does
That's
that mean?
true.
Well, meaning that we all interviewed them and before they got there. And we tried to understand what is it they would have to share that maybe the rest hadn't heard, or will hear it in a different way that clicks for them.
I was talking to somebody about this, and they said, I stopped going to events because I'm not really looking for anything new. You don't know what you're going to hear.
Oh my gosh, no. And what do you mean you're not looking for something new? I'm going to call your spouse or your kids and say, guess what? They've just decided no new stuff, no new experiences, no new ideas, no new jokes, no nothing. From this on, it's going to be this. Copacetic is our phrase. What is that? That's not even real.
What goes through my mind is, I can't remember who said it. It's somebody else's quote, but it's impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. And when someone says, I don't need anything new, like in my mind goes, do they think that they actually know it all already? Because that's usually setting you up for a rude awakening just at some point, because business is always evolving. Whatever you know today, there's like an erosion if you're staying still. And the market will catch up and pass you, and you'll look up, and now you have to race to get back ahead of it.
On the surface, it's relatively simplistic, like all the greatest things are. But that is a big idea. So you don't actually know what you don't know. That's why all of you out there are journeyers. That's why you're listening to this program. You don't know what you're going to learn in the next show. You didn't know what Jose Medina was going to teach you a couple weeks ago. You just show up, and then you hear things, and some you take and put into place in your life, and others you take and put into place into your business, and other things you take and put into place in your relationships. That's why this event, Mega Camp, that we have coming up is my favorite single time of the year. Where else do you get 120 plus top MREA agents walking across the same stage to share the secret, the thing that they do better than everybody else? Because here's the truth. I can take pieces of everybody's genius and add them into my world, and then instantly my world gets bigger. That's the secret. The idea that you are going to be an expert in everything simply because you're an expert in something is a misnomer. That's why learning how to motivate, that's why learning how to get educated, and that's why in the next episode of this show, we're going to talk about how you manage your way to success. It's the pieces that we pick up along the way that help us complete the puzzle that is our lives. And I want to see you join me, Jay, and Gary at Mega Camp. Friends, if you haven't gotten tickets yet, I want you to go to tickets.mreanotes.com. Tickets.mreanotes.com. Coupon code MREA50. MREA50. I'm going to save you a little bit of money. Why am I doing that? Because I want to meet you where you are. It's important to me that you show up because here's what I just learned. You have no idea what you're going to hear. You don't even know what you're looking for. But when you hear it, you will feel it. And then, friends, you will know. Go forth and do likewise. There it is. That wraps another episode. Friends, I don't know what you're taking out of this. I really don't. I'll tell you what I want you to be taking out of it, which is these are the people that are having tremendously big lives. And the reason it's happening is because they're setting up the models and systems to do just that. Gary Keller told me that leadership is teaching people how to think so that they do the things they need to do when they need to do them, so that ultimately they get the things they want when they want to have them. And that's what I want for you. You're all leaders, but it begins with leading ourselves. If you're enjoying this podcast, I want you to click the subscribe button anywhere that you get your podcasts. We want to be the voice in your head every single week, and every week we're dropping new content. We also send out a newsletter at the conclusion of every show to make sure that you get the highest points in the models and systems that were discussed. So if you want to sign up, I need your name and your email address. Head over to the MillionaireAgentPodcast.com. MillionaireAgentPodcast.com. Enter your name and your email address, and every week that newsletter will be in your box. Friends, you just went on a journey. I hope that what happens between now and the next time we meet is absolutely wonderful for you. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.
This podcast is for general informational purposes only. The views, thoughts, and opinions of the guest represent those of the guest and not KWRI and its affiliates, and should not be construed as financial, economic, legal, tax, or other advice. This podcast is provided without any warranty or guarantee of its accuracy, completeness, timeliness, or results from using the information.